Howdy, folks. My name is Carol Mertz. I am one of the folks who co-organizes this lovely event, so thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. You make my life better by participating in these kinds of educational events that help us explore games and explore what games can mean to us as a culture. And so it makes me really excited to see people as excited about games as me and as you all. So beyond that, I am the media coordinator at Butterscotch Shenanigans, this wonderful little game studio here in the city, and I am also an independent designer. And that's what I'm gonna talk about today, is this card game that I made called Pass the Buck, a game of corporate responsibility management. And the reason that the title is an actual joke is because the reason I made this game was out of catharsis. I worked with, at my old studio that I used to run, I worked with a lot of corporate clients, and God, that was terrible. And so, and so I'm sitting here like, this is, sorry, twitchy finger. This is one of the most frustrating experiences I have ever had in my life, dealing with this back and forth of corporate, no, I can't do that. Corporate, no, he can't do that. Corporate, hey, I CC'd this guy, it's his job, not mine. And I was like, wow, if I don't turn this into a game, I'm just gonna go nuts. So I turned it into a game. And the goal for me was, my background was in video games. My background was largely focused on digital distribution, which I had learned was a pretty easy process for me at that point. I was able to launch stuff on itch.io. I'd launch stuff on the App Store, but I was like, you know what? I want to put a box on a shelf. And so that was the goal. I wanted to take something from start to finish, and also, you know, make something that really resonated not only with me, but with other people. So that's where Pass the Buck came in. And so the way that I started was the way that most tabletop games start, and that is with crappy dollar store index cards. And so the pre-production process is actually a lot of fun with card games, and it starts out really cheap and really simple, and it kind of gets you into this mode of this physical space that video games don't quite provide for you. And so you're working with these physical items, and you're play testing with these crappy index cards, and then you're seeing that your play testers just don't like playing with index cards. So you upgrade, and you print out nicer cards. You start designing nicer cards, and this was the pre-production process of just kind of iterating and learning how people play card games versus playing video games. And ultimately, pre-production and prototyping was cheap and simple as it should be. It should never take too much money to actually get a card game idea on a piece of paper and in front of people. But after that, you know, I play tested, I iterated, I was happy with the way that the game played, but then I was like, now what do I do? I know that I want it to be on a shelf, I know that I want to make this something that other people can play and enjoy, and I figured my three options were, I find a publisher, which as a first-time card game designer, that is not a likely chance. Publishers like to see a portfolio of work. Publishers like to know that you are consistent and can actually create a game that is marketable. And I didn't have that. I was a newbie. The other option would be that I could bootstrap and pay for manufacturing and production myself, and that was a terrifying prospect because that meant I would have no concept of retail viability, and that is, well, that's stupid is what that is. And so the final option, which is the option I wound up going with, was crowdfunding. And really just trying to reach out to the masses and say, hey, this game resonates with me. Does it resonate with you? If so, will you help me make it? Will you help me see this product through to the end? And so that's where I went. And I used Kickstarter, as so many of us do, and it's a great platform for games, and especially for physical games, because people love getting stuff. But my cautionary tale for Kickstarter is that you need to research a lot before you start thinking about it. Specifically, I mean, obviously all of these things. For card games, I would like to point out specifically freight costs. A lot of, especially if you're going to China to produce your games, a lot of manufacturers don't include freight costs in their quotes for you, and that is really scary when you consider that freight costs can cost $1,000 or more just to ship your games across an ocean. Another thing that I would like to point out is that little guy dummy fees up there. That means you're going to screw up, and you need to account for that in your Kickstarter goal. I usually account for about 10% of dummy fees because I know that I'm going to buff something up and it's not going to be good, and I was really glad that I did that, and we'll get to that in a bit. Finally, before you go into crowdfunding, if you're making a project that is important to you, it's really important for you to have a backup plan. Like, know what you're going to do with this game if it doesn't make its way through on Kickstarter. My backup plan was to go through a print-on-demand service called the Game Crafter and just offer the game to people through that, have it printed one at a time as people wanted it, and just sell it for an extraordinary cost at $30 a piece, which is expensive for the player, doesn't give me much profit, but it was a way to at least put the game out there. So that was my backup plan. Fortunately, I didn't need it. So I managed to actually hit 2 stretch goals with the Kickstarter campaign after a lot of work of getting my friends to give me their money. And after all of the fees and everything came out, I had just over $10,000 to make this game, which was extraordinary and mind-boggling and just so heartening to realize that people cared about something that I made. But that $10,000 looks like a lot right now. After all of the wonderful production process, however, it starts looking like a lot less. So manufacturing product, I don't know if any of you all have done this before, but it is hecking complicated. There's a lot of approvals, there is a lot of stipulations, there's a lot of things that you don't realize goes into the process when you're making a product. And the most important part of it probably is just to make sure that your cat helps you inspect all of your sheet proofs. I made sure that she had licked every square inch of that sheet proof before I sent my approval, but that may have actually set my timeline back by a little bit, and I mean, I do regret that just slightly. But this is a really good example of just kind of how occupied my mind was during the production process. There are approvals at the digital proof, there's approvals at the sheet proof, there's approvals at the production copy when they send you the one-off, and then finally they ship you everything, and this is then what your studio looks like, and also your brain when you're dealing with 1,500 copies of a game. But along every step of the way, you could stumble and you could set your timeline back by weeks or months if you don't approve on time. There's also a lot of things to take for granted when you're manufacturing a physical product. Like, how many of you have ever bought one of these before? Now I have. It's like one of those things where you see it everywhere and then you're just suddenly like, wow, wait, I have to buy a UPC code? What is that for? And you can find them online, you can research it, you can actually buy them really cheap, but you have to actually think about that, like, oh, if I want this on shelves, oh yeah, it has to have one of those numbers or whatever. Also, you have to think about MSRP and also your wholesale costs. That's something that as digital game sellers, we don't think about all that much. I mean, we think about the MSRP, but we're not thinking about wholesale. So you have to set your MSRP so that you profit off of the base cost of the game, and then also your wholesale, so you profit off of the base cost of the game. And it's ridiculous, and it's mind-blowing. Mine I set at $20. The cost of each box was $5 to me, and I sold them wholesale at $10. So at $10, I was still able to make a 100% profit on each box. Another thing, as video game designers, we design our art in RGB. That is for screens. If you design an RGB for print, it's not gonna look good. And I learned that the hard way, and that was a really stupid mistake. But always design, if you're designing for print, always design in CMYK. This was a big one, and fortunately didn't impact me, but when you're shipping from China, did you know that, like, companies do that, and those companies can go bankrupt? Yeah. Also, when you're shipping from China, did you know that all of your stuff has to go through customs? And sometimes you share a crate with somebody, and they have, like, for example, this is a real story that I heard. Some card game or a board game was sharing a shipping crate with a wine company, and the wine bottles were wrapped in barbed wire for some reason. and got stopped at customs and held up their fulfillment by like 2 months. It's ridiculous, and that stuff happens, and you would never know it. Like, they didn't know who they were sharing their crate with. And I was super, super fortunate that all of my stuff went through. All of my things for shipping and manufacturing and everything went off without a hitch, and even still, I barely made my conservative estimate. Finally, this thing. What the heck is that? I had never seen that or heard of that until well after I had manufactured my game. But it turns out if you want to sell in Europe, you need that on the box, because that tells people that tells the European, I guess the European Union, that you manufactured under the regulations to be able to sell in Europe. So I can't sell in Europe. Anyway, so problems like that are going to sneak up on you, and it's going to cost you money, it's going to cost you time, and it is going to cost you a lot of stress and emotional anguish. And as you can see on my face there, I had a lot of that. This is me after receiving 1,500 copies of my card game to my old studio by freight on a giant pallet with me and 4 other people to help me carry them up a flight of stairs. It was exhausting. After that, I had to start fulfilling to backers, and I had done all of my research in advance and planned on my games to only weigh a ½ pound or less. Turns out, my games weighed 8.2 ounces when packaged, and that doubled my international shipping costs. So all of my predictions for everything all fell to heck during this phase. After I had received all my things, I had gone through all of my money, and then I realized that I owed another, I think something like $300 in international shipping costs, which was really disheartening. But fortunately, because of that dummy estimate that I mentioned earlier, see it's coming full circle, I was covered. After everything was said and done, I shipped 900 copies of my game to Amazon to warehouse them and to have a place where I could actually sell everything, have a place to point to people, and then I started hitting the pavement and promoting the game. I got reviews, I got featured at the Indiecade showcase at E3, I was featured at Indiecade's Indie Exchange last year, and I have been invited back once again, you're gonna see a theme here, to Indiecade this year as a table games showcase. And it worked out really well for me from that front because I was able to meet a lot of great people. I was able to get that feeling of quality out of my game, that people were recognizing that the game was worth featuring and showcasing. But even though that promotion took so much energy and that promotion took so much time and money, it doesn't always amount to as much as you expect it to. So we're about to get real here for a second. So with Kickstarter, I managed to fulfill about 300 copies. By selling wholesale to retail outlets around the city, I was my own distributor, so I had to do all of this myself. I had to reach out to people myself and say, hey, I'm a newbie, you want to take a risk on me? I managed to sell 100 copies that way, which I think is pretty good for me, for all the time that I have. Like I told you a second ago, I sent 900 retail copies to Amazon, hoping that I would be able to fulfill a bunch of sales through that, knowing that I was going to be getting all this promotion, knowing that I was going to be featured in so many different spots, seeing all of these great reviews come in, like, people like me, wow! Guess how many I sold on Amazon? Today, 40 copies of those 900 copies have been sold on Amazon. So that just tells you promotion is hard work. And I have a full-time job, and all of the promotion that I did has amounted to 40 copies. So because of that, Amazon was like, hey, we see that you're not selling super quick. We're gonna offer you a deal. Normally we would charge you a whole bunch for this, but we're gonna offer you a deal to recall all of your games. And so I kind of took them up on that and didn't have to pay money to pull my games from their store. I left a couple hundred, but I pulled 700 copies from Amazon by their request. So that's a pretty intense thing to feel, right? And I got to receive, oh sorry, this is my money breakdown. I'm about to get real with money. But it's a pretty amazing feeling to receive freight at your apartment. So anyway, games aren't cheap. Like I said, prototyping is cheap. About $162 went into that, including those print-on-demand copies that I used to take to Indiecade, and I used to take to Pixel Pop last year, things like that. For Kickstarter prep, I printed signs, I printed stickers, things like that. Still pretty cheap, only about $50. Promotion and travel, I flew myself to E3, put myself up so that I could go to E3 and meet other devs, demo for 3 days straight to a whole bunch of industry folks. That cost me about $1,500. I went to a couple of other conventions where I was able to show it and talk about it. I didn't include those costs here, but I think you can do that locally for a non-cost by going to board game nights, by going to conventions like this. So promotion and travel, not cheap. Manufacturing and rewards is where most of that money came out. That was about $7,500 for 1,500 copies. And shipping and fulfillment was surprisingly expensive. $2,000 between fulfilling to all of my Kickstarter backers, shipping 900 copies of the game to Amazon, and filling in those stragglers, sending games to reviewers, things like that. That all costs shipping money when you're dealing with physical product. So let's take a look at the breakdown. None of my hard costs, I think it's really important to note, included my time working on the game. When we're talking about making games, we're talking about making games for a living. That means being able to support yourself by making games. These numbers didn't let me support myself making this game, and that's okay. I wasn't planning on it. Like I said, I went into it wanting to learn rather than wanting to become wealthy. I think that would have been a really silly thing to want to do. But this really is sobering to me to look at these numbers, that I have made $500-ish of profit total in the last year on this game. I don't mind that at all, but it's just something to be aware of as you're coming into your first game. It is not at all easy to make a lot of money on it. So let's get real, once again. Real talk, this is a picture of the inside of my closet after receiving those 700 copies from Amazon.com. And I wanted to make a game that would be self-sustainable. I wanted to be able to make a game that I would be able to sell enough that I would be able to then get another run of the game made. And it would be able to kind of continue supporting itself on retail shelves, supporting itself, and just be able to pay for its longevity. The reality of the situation is that this is probably the way that my closet is going to look for a very long time. But you know what? That's okay. That's why I told you in that second slide that I made this game to learn. I made this game for catharsis. I made this game for myself. And I'm really, really proud of that. And I'm really, really proud of, and you don't even see it. This is two rows deep, actually. That's not even, you're not seeing everything. There's a lot more games there than you think. So, ultimately, what does this mean for you? If you are just coming into this and you're like, I want to start making games now, and this applies as a video game creator as well. But I want to start making games. I really, I'm gung-ho. I want to make this my living. I think my first game, I'm going to just run with it and make bank, and it's going to be great. Well, first do your research. Understand what it takes to make something. Understand what it takes to create something that is retail viable. Understand what it takes to put something on Kickstarter and make it successful. Find all of the resources that you need to find in order to really create the product that you want to create. Also, be realistic. If it's your first game, it's probably not going to be a profitable game. It's just the way that it is. You're going to make mistakes on your early games. You're going to make mistakes, and they're going to cost you money. And just approach it not from the mindset of, I'm going to make a lot of money. Approach it from the mindset of, I want to learn a lot of lessons. Also, ask for help. You're here at Pixel Pop, where you're learning from people who have done things before you. You're here at Pixel Pop, where you can meet all of these developers who are making games that inspire you. You're here at Pixel Pop, where you can walk out into the hallway and meet somebody who's made an incredible game and who's had so many experiences that you will probably never have. And you can compare notes, and you can learn from each other, and you can help each other, and that is an incredible thing. Finally, make things that matter to you so that when they don't make money, so that when you don't make a profit, you still gain something. Because if you come into it feeling like, I'm in this for the money. I see that there's Flappy Bird made billions of dollars. I can do that. That's a lottery ticket. That's not reality. What you need to be doing is focusing your time and focusing your energy and focusing your creative passions toward the things that drive you, toward the things that make you happy, and toward the things that fulfill you. That's where the money is. Well, not actually, but but that's what's going to keep you going in this industry, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So that was it. I may have talked a little quicker than I expected to. Oh, actually, I'm right on time. So thank you so much. I think we may have time for like one question if you have any. Otherwise, I'll be around. We are getting ready to enter into an AV break, so I'll just hang out up here if you have any questions. But so I should mention this talk was based on a really, really exhaustive, like 10-page article that I wrote on my blog. Yes, Samantha. I am working on ideas now. I don't have a hard project, but the next idea for my project is continued self-expression. Because that's why I make games, is for self-expression. And I'm just kind of exploring different avenues to continue that vision. But yeah, so like I was saying, the blog, check it out. All of the numbers are on there if you're curious. All of the cash dollars broken down into exhaustive detail. That's it. Thank you so much.